Welcome. This is a discussion of Chapter 4, which is about states of consciousness. This chapter is distinctly divided into two sections. One section talks about sleep and wakefulness. The other section talks about illicit drugs. So first I'm going to talk about sleep and wakefulness. You can tell what stage of sleep or wakefulness a person's in by measuring the electrical output of the brain. There's this device called an EEG, an electroencephalogram, which literally has little wires that stick right on your head and measures the electrical output of the brain. And using that device, you can tell what stage of sleep or what stage of wakefulness a person's in. Now, in your book, it talks about different kinds of brain waves and what they mean in terms of are you awake, are you relaxed, are you alert, and are you asleep or are you dreaming? And so look at that little section when you get the chance. Interestingly, when you are dreaming, dreaming's called rapid eye movement sleep, because literally when you're dreaming and your eyes are closed, underneath your eyelids, your eyes are darting about, almost as if you're looking at those things you're seeing in your dream. When we go into rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep it's sometimes called, in fact our brain turns on like a light bulb and starts sending crazy fast signals, almost like we are awake and alert. And so REM sleep is oftentimes called paradoxical sleep because we're sound asleep and dreaming, our body is virtually paralyzed, and yet our brain waves look like we are awake and alert. All right, next let's talk about the stages of sleep throughout the night. When we first go to sleep, we go into stage 1, and then deeper into stage 2, and then off down in 3, and then into stage 4. Those 4 stages together are called the rest and repair stages because our body is doing internal maintenance, cleaning itself up, looking for viruses and bacteria and kicking out cancer cells and other kinds of, basically restoring itself. And then we climb back up again. So we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, and we come back up again. 3, 2, and then instead of going back to 1, we go into our first dream of the night, REM sleep, our first dream. And at first we dream only about 10 minutes. So the first cycle of the night takes about 90 minutes. And then we cycle again and cycle again and cycle again, going through the various different stages of sleep. Each section takes about 90 minutes, but the composition of those sections change throughout the night. In the beginning, we're spending most of our time in the rest and repair stages and very little time dreaming. By morning, most of that 90 minutes is taken up with dreaming. Everyone dreams. Babies dream the most. As we get older, we dream less and less, but our mental well-being really depends upon our dreaming. If we don't dream, our cognition just literally falls apart. But why do we dream is the question. Many people wonder why we dream, and they speculate a lot about that. Freud wrote a whole book on why we dream. Here's some of the theories out there on why we dream. One of the theories out there on why we dream is that that's a time of night when our memories are laying down their permanent pathways in the brain so that they can become long-term stored memories. Another idea about dreaming, because dreams tend to be very visual and very emotional, another idea about dreaming is that this is a period of time when we work out our emotional troubles. You might have heard somebody say, just sleep on it and you'll feel better in the morning. Another idea about dreaming, and this one I absolutely know is true from my own life experience, and that is that during the day we have all these different experiences, and then at night during dreaming our brain turns itself on and begins to send itself little bits of memory from our experiences throughout the day, just little random bits of memory. But because we're human, we have to make sense of that. So we weave a story out of it, and we stir in familiar people and familiar places. And I remember a while back having this really frightening knife dream with big knives and someone chasing me and my family around in the house. And I woke up and I said to myself, okay, just relax, take a deep breath, think about your day. Where did you get that dream? Because if you can find it in your dream, in your daytime, suddenly it demystifies the whole thing, and the thing becomes much less real and much less scary. And so I thought about my day. Where did I go? I went for coffee, I went to the mall, and all of a sudden I thought about it. I went into one of those cooking stores where they were showing cutlery, big chef's knives and all that. And because I've seen a lot of movies just like you, I kind of shuddered and I'm like, ooh, wouldn't want to leave that knife on the counter, you know, weapon of opportunity. And sure enough, that night, what do I dream? A big knife dream. So that part I know is true, not just from that night, but from many other dreams I've had. I challenge you, when you wake up from a dream, say, where did I get that dream? You can probably find it. Another idea about dreaming is a Freudian idea. And Freud said that we had all these repressed things in our unconscious mind, like sexual urges and aggressive urges, but we knew we couldn't act on those in our waking life because it's just unacceptable. But at night, we had just free abandon to dream about anything we want. Freud called dreams the royal road to the unconscious mind. And you know, I always thought that was just a little strange too. But many, many years ago, I'll give you one more of my own examples. Many years ago, it happened, you know, that this one kid's out playing with my kid, and my child actually got really hurt, a broken arm. And I never said anything to the kid or his parents or anything. I just had my son's arm casted up. But that night when I'm dreaming, here came that boy from across the street, and here came a car and ran him over. Oh, I woke up. I felt so guilty. I thought, that's horrible. Why would you dream such a horrible thing? And then I thought, it's Freudian. You know, because in my waking life, I wouldn't admit to anyone, even to myself, that I would have such angry wishes. But evidently, Freud would say they were hidden down there. You were that mad at that kid for hurting your child. Anyway, I don't know, but that's a Freudian idea. Interesting to think about. Okay, so then in this chapter, they also talk about sleep disorders, many different sleep disorders, like nightmares and night terrors and sleep apnea and insomnia. They also mention a disorder called narcolepsy, a very interesting disorder where people sleep too much in the daytime, and they have other odd experiences, like you know, they'll be in their daytime and maybe they're driving the car talking to someone, and all of a sudden they get what they call a sleep attack and they just fall asleep. And they have other odd experiences too, which some of you might have had this experience, where you go to sleep and when it's time to wake up, your brain wakes up before your body, so it's like you can't move for a few minutes. And they have a number of other interesting experiences too. Sometimes their brain wakes up before the other way around. Their body wakes up, they get up, but part of their brain is still dreaming. They call that a hypnagogic hallucination. So it's like they hear someone coming up the stairs, but in fact, they're still dreaming, even though they're standing up in the bathroom. And so they have a lot of odd, interesting experiences, along with this fact that they sleep too much during the daytime. There's a number of different things they can do, medications and whatnot that can help. Okay, now the last section of this book this chapter talks about illicit drugs and how they change our state of consciousness. And they divide them into different categories. The first category they talk about is stimulants. And with stimulants, they can be synthetic or they can be natural. Most of the ones we're talking about with stimulants are synthetic. All those drugs that end in the "in" sound, like Benzodran, Disoxin, Ritalin, Dexedrine, ephedrine, all those drugs. Those drugs tend to cause us to be wide awake and alert and sometimes even kind of peppy and cheerful, but they also suppress our appetite. And they increase our heartbeat and blood pressure and whatnot. Sometimes those drugs can be given for a diet or people that have trouble with too much fatigue and things like that, but many times those drugs are taken illicitly. We all know, I think, that today methadone has become a nationwide problem. When people abuse these drugs, they can use them in such a fashion that in fact it can be harmful. Cocaine is another drug in the stimulant category, but it's a natural type of product taken from coca leaves. And you can ingest it many different ways. As a matter of fact, I'll mention to you that there are many ways to ingest drugs. You can eat drugs, you can snort them, you can inject them, or you can smoke them. The very fastest way of all to get any drug into the brain is by smoking it. And many people do with cocaine, in fact, form it into this rock form called crack, and they smoke it. It is a very powerful, fast central nervous system enhancer. And it gives you a very quick rush. You feel exhilarated, you feel awake and powerful, and you don't need to sleep, and you're not hungry, and all of that. With cocaine, though, unlike other amphetamines or other stimulants, it wears off really fast. I mean, in 10 minutes or so, 5 sometimes, you're back to normal again. And then you crave to do it again. And so people go on binges, and they'll binge for 12, 24, 36 hours sometimes. They'll be on a crack binge where they just keep doing it again and again. And needless to say, it's expensive. They use all their money. And then they go through a period of normal where they don't take the drug, and then pretty soon they're back binging again. It can be a terrible, terrible habit. It destroys lives. It destroys families. It can be terrible. Okay, then the next category is depressants. And depressants could be barbiturates, like those drugs that end in -ol, like phenobarbital and others, that Nembutal, Seconal, Tuinal, those end in -ol. And those are pretty powerful sedative type drugs that make you relax or even sleep. The milder ones in that category would be considered tranquilizers. That'd be like Xanax, Librium, Valium, that sort of thing. And they kick in pretty quickly within a few minutes, and they make you feel more relaxed. They're not as powerful as the barbiturates, however. This category in general you have to be very careful about, and some people do take them illicitly. You have to be very careful with this category because they're very quickly addictive. It's easy to overdose on. You know, it's like taking sleeping pills, you can die. And also, not only do you become physically addicted very quickly, you have to be super careful not to mix these drugs with alcohol, because alcohol is a downer also. It's a sedative also. And so you mix the two together, they have an exponential effect on one another, and it can put a person right into a coma. All right, let me mention alcohol next. Alcohol is the #1 drug, other than cigarettes. Cigarettes, of course, is a very popular drug, and caffeine and all that, but alcohol in this category is the #1 drug of choice among college students. As a matter of fact, 42% say the last time they were out partying, they binged on alcohol, meaning 4 drinks at a time for females or 5 drinks at a time for males. And so college students do drink alcohol often. Unfortunately, it can be associated, you know, when you're using heavy doses, it can be associated with all sorts of negative things like accidents, higher levels of assault, higher levels of sexual assault. Certainly, I mentioned accidents. That's the #1 cause of death among young people today between 17 and 24 is fatal accidents with automobiles due to overdosing on alcohol. And so alcohol can have all kinds of negative effects. And some people, in fact, do become addicted to it. It's called dependent on alcohol, and then they have to go through a very unpleasant withdrawal that can be dangerous if you don't do it under medical supervision. Okay, the next category then is opiates or narcotic drugs. They can be synthetic or they can be natural. Synthetic type, actually, let me mention the natural ones first. Natural opiate drugs would be things like heroin, morphine, codeine, that sort of thing. And they have a very much of a pain-killing effect, as well as causing you to be very relaxed or even sleepy. The other ones that would be in that category would be the synthetic ones, and that would be things like Demerol, Percodan, Oxycontin, and others. There's a number of them in that category of the synthetic opiates, and they have the same effect. They very much kill pain, and so they're sometimes prescribed by doctors, and also they have sedative effects. But many times people will take these drugs illicitly, and they are very quickly addictive and can be very problematic in people's lives. And in addition to that, some people do choose to inject these drugs, which means that it introduces the possibility of AIDS on top of everything else. All right, then let's see, hallucinogens, the last category I didn't mention, would include things like marijuana. Many people didn't know it, but marijuana is a hallucinogen, a mild hallucinogen. It causes people to be euphoric and relaxed, but also it's a mild hallucinogen. All right, and then there are many others in this category too. LSD is one that happens to be a very powerful hallucinogen, causing changes in perception, altered mood, altered thoughts, a very powerful hallucinogen. And then there are a number of others. You've heard of shrooms, psilocybin, just a whole bunch of others fit into this category as well. All right, that's enough. That's a quick overview. There's a chart on those drugs, by the way, in your chapter, and I'll see you later. You can review my study guide too. That'll help you out. It gives you a much more extensive list about words from this chapter. All right, thank you.